Okay. All right. So, Boker Tov Shalom. Hey, you guys have a seat.
Sorry. Are you okay?
All righty. So, Shalom, everybody. And I guess Tu B'Shvat Sameach, I guess we say. So, because of Tu B'Shvat, I've been asked, and it's a pleasure, that I'm just going to be doing sort of like a Dvar Torah with a little bit of travel, pictures in it, short, and then we'll go back to what we usually do. And I'm sure, I think Rabbi Taylor's coming in the next class, that's going to be about Tu B'Shvat. So I'm sure he's going to mention that Tu B'Shvat, as we know, it is really a very technical, halachic demarcation in the year. And over the course of the millennia, it became just a general holiday for celebrating Eretz Yisrael. So that's what I'm going to do. I just want to mention a couple of lessons that when I tour around the country, midrashim that it sort of pop out at me, and that's what we'll do for the next little bit, and then we'll get back to our regular sessions. All right, so let me just put this over here. Okay, all right. We all know the song, right? We grew up on it, especially if you come from Chutz La'aretz. Shkedia Parachat, V'Shemesh Pas Zarachat. So the Shkedia, the almond tree is actually, it's true, where I live in Nofi Ayalon. Now we have Emek Ayalon in front of us. We're actually going to be touring there today. And they have a lot of almond orchards, and it is true. All of a sudden this time of year, you just drive right through. Yeah, you've seen it, and it just, boom, it sprouts out. The first trees to go are going to be the white buds of the almonds. So it's very beautiful. And these are midrashim that I think about when, let's say, celebrating Eretz Yisrael and the fact that we're in today. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe, Hein ha'aretz chaviva alai, the land is beloved to me. V'Yisrael chavivin alai, and the Jewish people are beloved to me. So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ani achnis et Yisrael she'ein chavivin alai le'eretz shechaviva alai. So I'm going to take these two things that I love and put them together on the shelf. All right? That's like, it always reminds me as a kid, and I talk to you guys, people would appreciate this. Do you remember like those little plastic models? I asked my students today, they don't know what I'm talking about. We used to get plastic models with plastic pieces, and you take that glue and you put them together. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, it's a thing of the past. And all these little 8-year-olds were like bumping against the walls because they would be sniffing the glue and they didn't realize that that's what it does to them. It was fantastic. So I had one of Superman and one of Apollo 13. Those are on my shelves. My two beloveds on my shelf. So that's why Hashem loves the Jewish people. He loves Eretz Yisrael. But look at the next medrash. Yesh Adam shehu na'eh ulevusho ka'or. The person's handsome, but their clothing is not. Hu ka'or, or the person's not so handsome, ulevusho na'eh, but the clothing is handsome. V'Yisrael heim na'im la'aretz. Jewish people are handsome for the land. V'ha'aretz na'eh lahem. And the land is handsome for the Jewish people. So what is this medrash adding to the first? Oh, nice. A symbiotic relationship. Not just that Hashem loves the Jewish people and the land, but he set it up that we are symbiotically connected. So that when the Jewish people are on the land, we shine, we max out. And when we do come to Eretz Yisrael maxes out. So to learn those lessons, let's take a look. The Gemara says like this. Before that, the Pasuk in Vayikra, we're in the middle, deep into the middle of the Tochacha, of the psukim that talk about retribution in Parshat Bechukotai. And there the pasuk says, "Vashimoti ani et haaretz v'shamamu aleh oyevechem hayoshvim ba." That Hashem says part of the retribution will be that I'm going to make the land desolate, and it's going to become desolate also for the enemies who are sitting there, who try to settle. As we know, that's a good thing. Says Rashi and the Ramban. Zumida tovali Yisrael. It's a good thing. That because the land is going to be desolate, it's going to be very hard to settle here, and therefore that nobody's going to be able to settle. In other words, God keeps the land pretty much empty, waiting for us to come back. We have enough problems as it is for people who are here coming back at the same time as us. Can you imagine if the land would be full, there would be no room for us to be able to come back into it. The flip on this pasuk is going to be the famous Gemara in Sanhedrin. Amar Rabbi Abba, Ein Locha Kates Begula Mizeh. There's no greater revelation of the coming of the redemption than when the land starts giving forth its fruit. As Yechezkel says, Atem Harei Yisrael, Anfechem Titnu, Piyachem Tisu La'ami Yisrael. Mountains of Israel, give forth your produce and the fruit for my people, for their return is near. As Rashi says, Kashititain Eretz Yisrael Piryah, Ba'ayin Yafeh, when the land starts giving forth produce in a good amount, Az Yikarei V'Kates, Ve'en Lecha Kates V'Gula Yoteh, it's a sign of the coming of the redemption. Something that we're able to, you take, whenever I take a bus, I tell again my students, don't sleep on buses, just put your nose up against the window and you take a look at the miracle that you're driving through. Travel around Eretz Yisrael today, it's like, as we know, and I think we, in this room, and we have the benefit of having enough years experience to recognize and see the growth. Does anybody remember when the Super Sol on Agron was the only supermarket in town, right? Right? And now every year, what do? We come back. First of all, everywhere you go, next to where I live in Yishbru, in Modi'in, there's, what's it called? I think, Yohananov. It's like, it reminds me of a mega store in, like it's just huge and it's got the going up. Yeah.
In Pardes Kana, there is a little market where the payroll is so beautiful. You just have to look at it and smell the aroma is unbelievable.
The miracles are jumping off the shelves at you.
Absolutely.
Right, every year I can't wait for grape season to see how much larger have the grapes gotten this year. Soon it's going to be big enough to put on a pole and you need two people to carry it home from the makolet. It's like, and we have that, we see through the years. We all can appreciate that. I try to give it over to my kids. They roll their eyes and say, oh, Dad's just going on again. But it's true. It's true. Yes?
My wife and I, we did volunteer work and we went to an avocado field down, I think it's pretty much as Beishemesh area, but I don't know exactly. But the avocados growing on the tree looked like pineapples. They were so big.
Baruch Hashem. Amazing. Amazing. So that's a sign of the coming of the redemption. And I could lose myself in this, but we're not going to have time for the the regular shiur. But all kinds of stories of people coming here at the turn. I had students who had grandparents who came here at the beginning of the last century. They're great. They were successful. They weren't successful here. They went to Australia, and they're like one of the great citrus exporters from Australia, mega millions. And but when his great grandfather was here in the early 1900s, it wasn't successful because the Kadosh Baruch Hu hadn't turned on the switch yet. It's a sign of the coming of the redemption. So let's just take a visual, real fast. Back in the late 1800s, the Jewish people were trying to get to the land, and they wanted to buy up land from Arab landholders. This is a narrative that's important for me. I give it over to the birthright kids. They had to buy up land, and the land was bought fair and square from Arab landowners that did not live here. They either lived up in Damascus or up in Turkey someplace. So what was able to be bought? Usually garbage land at exorbitant prices. So you were able to buy along the coast because that was just sand. You bought here, the Carmel Mountains was desolate. And you bought marshlands such as Emek Yisrael or the Chula Valley. And that's famous. We grew up with that as far as draining the swamps because they were marshlands. It actually is for a shiur at a different time maybe. It's not a shiur, it's more politics, but there's a come to Yom Ha'atzmaut. But if you take the land that was bought, it makes like a Z like that, which is exactly like the Peel Commission of 1936. But that's a different shiur. But anyway, let's take a look. Isn't that cool? Chula Valley. I'm on Ramat Naftali looking at the Golan Heights. I'm looking down at the Chula Valley. Not much of a valley. It looks like a big bathtub filled with water. And that's what it is. That's the 1930s, right? It was a swamp. And that brings us water buffalo in 1940s. But nothing's growing over here. And that brings us to these pictures. We figure this out. It's what? We think it's the 1930s or 40s. But they're draining the swamps. The stories of the malaria. And here definitely, I think it's a little bit later. This definitely, I believe, not definitely, I think, is early 1950s. The first major project of the JNF was to drain the Chula swamp. And we learned the lesson over there because we sort of messed up. There was a filtration system for the Kinneret, which we weren't aware of. And we almost messed ourselves up, or the Kinneret. And we were able to, if you go there, you'll see like parts of the Chula have been re-swamped, filled with water, and that's it's important. But anyway, this is they're going out to drain the chula. Anyway, that's what it looked like. Yeah. And we come back to the land, and all of a sudden, Eretz Yisrael says, "Oh, the Jewish people are back over here. I better start doing something. Stop being lazy, and start producing." Bread basket with the Hermon Mountains in the back over here, even more beautiful. I'm up on Ramat Naftali. I'm looking down at the Golan Heights with its with the top dormant volcanoes. Obviously, the Hermon. Look at this, beautiful. And this one, just beautiful. Again, snow up on the Hermon. Chula Valley of today. When we come back to the land starts giving forth its fruit. It stops being marshes and swamps. Another lesson. Anybody want to take a guess at this one? I'm not sure if this is late 1800s, early 1900s. I am now walking down this straight street of, it's still like that today, Zichron Yaakov. All right, late 1800s. You can see people are still dressed European. That's who it was who came and settled the land. First Aliyah. This is Rehov HaNu Miyazdin. Thank you. Rehov Miyazdin. All right, and so Baron Rothschild, right? This is, again, I'm doing this quick because it's not today's shir. Baron Rothschild says, he's scratching his head. What can I give these people to do, make a parnasa? Well, we say every morning, Tigancha, Tiroshcha, V'yitzarecha, Tiroshcha. Let him start making some wine over here. Where are we at? I say Zichron Yaakov, you say? Carmel. Same vaults from back then. We're at the Carmel Winery since 1882. And that's how it is. And growing up in America, what did we have on the table? Carmel or Manischewitz, right? Extra heavy malag or whatever, right? And Manischewitz. That was for Pesach. So you had to have a spoon to scoop it out of the bottle. But that's what was basically out there. What do we got nowadays? 1986. Jewish people are in the Chula Valley. This is the improved one. And look at this, the Golan Heights, all right? And you can see the back. Our eastern border of the Golan Heights is a natural border made out of these dormant volcanoes. They're all over the place, these mounds. If this is a volcano, so again, 67, we have to, with the miracle, with the help of God and the Mesiras Nefesh of Am Yisrael, our boys are able to get up on the top of the Golan Heights, push the Syrians back, and within 2 days, right over here. And if there's volcanoes here, that means this whole plateau is volcanic plateau. Means that there's minerals in the ground. Same thing is if you look at the map, that the Golan Heights is connected up to Ramot Naftali Heights. That's where you also have, that's also volcanic. You take the minerals in the ground and you connect it up with the vineyards that were planted in the Golan with the Hermon in the back with the snow on it. What I got, great temperatures, great materials in the ground, minerals in the ground. So what am I going to produce from 1986? Golan Heights Winery, and that's their story. And that's why all of a sudden, the same vine that I stuck in the Carmel Mountains, which was okay, but you put them up in the Golan Heights in the proper climate and the proper ground, you're going to get, your gold medal winners around the world. And that's what we're dealing with. Baruch Hashem, that's also the story of the land giving forth its fruit. Everywhere you go now in Eretz Yisrael, it's all filled with wineries. I'm just going to go to the extreme, to the Ramat HaNegev winery. My son actually brought me a bottle as a present. And I didn't know the winery, but it had a clipper ship on the front. And it said, Southern Port. I couldn't figure out what a southern port has to do with Israel and the Negev and a clipper ship. All of a sudden they're like, boink, oh, it was a port wine, and they were making a play on the words. It's a southern from the south, and it's a port wine, southern port, clipper ship. Very creative. This is the Ramat HaNegev. We're down near the Egyptian border. Look at this. This is the Negev, right, in that area. There's nothing growing over here. This stuff is naturally organic. Why? It's so hot down in the desert, in the Negev desert. There's no fungus growing. There's no bugs that are infesting over here the vineyard. It's organic just because they don't have to put anything out there, but yet it grows. We stick something into the land and it comes up beautiful. So nowadays, Eretz Yisrael is blessed. This is an Israel wine map. This is already out of date. I think we're up to 15 different regions of wines. Fantastic. That's the old lesson. What's the other lesson learned from this? The famous mashal of the Kuzari Rabbi Yehuda Halevi from the 1100s. what he said, Omar Chaver, Kach Gam Harchem, your mountains, it's like the Kerem Matzliach Bo, like a vineyard that's being successful on the mountains. Now, to make it successful, you have to do things. And that's similar to the mitzvot that we do that makes us as a people successful. Yet, I can take that vine and work on it, and it'll give me forth fruit. But, Ulan, Shalok Kerim, not like your regular, your Kerim, if you take the vine and you put it elsewhere, it will also give forth fruit. But if you take that same vine and put it into the best, you put it in a place where there's nice weather and it's cool and there's great minerals in the ground, you get a gold medal winner. You take Am Yisrael, you put it in the ground here in Eretz Yisrael, and that's where we max out as a people. Not only because this is where Nevuah is and where we have a lot more mitzvahs, but obviously Al Pitos Rav Kook, as far as the ability to stand strong as a nation and to represent to the world what's the concept of godliness in this world as a nation. That's going to be the lessons that we learn from the Keren and what we see in front of our eyes as we travel around this country. And that's why, as we come into Tu B'Shvat, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Patach, Amad, Vayimodei Eretz, says the pasuk, God went around and measured out all the lands, Madad HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kol HaArtzot, measured all the lands, and he didn't find a land that was fitting for the Jewish people, but for Eretz Yisrael. And happy Tu B'Shvat. Yes?
Can I just take a moment to enhance two points? Number one, in Toronto, Rabbi Gemara objected at one point.
Yes.
Taking your point, it's very nice to pat ourselves on the back and think Israel's good for us, Israel's bad for us. But the other, it's instructive to look at the other side of it. There's conflicts all over the world, and when there's conflicts,
Yeah, I'm listening. So I'm just getting to the next.
The city still exists. There's still people there. It still continues on. And in Israel, it doesn't. Israel is significantly different from everywhere else in that, in fact, when Israel is away, it doesn't continue on. As every other nation, every other country in the world does, no matter what the nation is there. So it
Right.
sort of enhances your point. The other issue is with grapes. Years ago, my son, when he was about 5 years old, came over to me. I was sitting taking dinner with a friend, and he says, Abba, why was it a butler and a baker? And
Yeah.
I looked at him and I said, what? Who asks that question? Why was it a butler and a baker?
Yes.
And I said, but in fact, somebody you probably know, Benny Zinzite, was in Toronto at the time.
Yeah.
And he had just been sure about Egypt as the breadbasket of the world. And I was thinking there, and I said to myself, I said to my son, it's a message that was coming through there that only Yosef would have understood. Yosef, who had lived in Israel and lived in Egypt, would have known what we found out later when the Ravine came to Israel. And what did they come back with? They came back with Eshkol. Yosef would have understood the great people are going to be fine, the bread people are not going to be fine. It was a message in the dreams to Yosef that what he was doing is right and that where things were going to. When they come back, when Moshe sends the spies, the second group here, and they get to Israel, what do they see? It's harvest time for Rimon and Eshkol, etc., etc. But what do they call the river? They call the river Nachal Eshkol. Where's the Nachal Rimoni? It isn't, because Israel is the great country. And then when I came here last time, I was looking around saying, they tried so hard to make this a citrus place. And despite all of their attempts, you turn around today, you can't throw a stone over your back and not hit a winery.
Mm-hmm.
This is the great country.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what you're saying,
Beautiful.
it's so reinforced by this Torah, right from
Yes.
Yosef, from the dreams that they told Yosef in the prison to today. This
Yes.
is the land of the great.
That's beautiful. 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 True. Yes.
Question.
Sure.
I walked around yesterday looking for shkediat trees that were already in blossom, and all I
Yes.
saw were buds. This year we're a leap year, so we're really like a month early.
Yes, we are.
Why didn't the rabbis make 2 Shvats, with Tu B'Shvat coming in the second one,
Yefeh.
and then Adar with Purim and Pesach?
Yefeh Mod. That's a very beautiful question. The Gemara in Megillah talks about it,
Yeah.
but it's based on Psukim, but your question still stands. I don't know.
what the-
And it was because we're going to decide halacha on Shvat, on Rosh Chodesh Shvat or Tu B'Shvat? Good question. Don't know. Excellent. Okay. This is problematic, the title. How would does anybody want? How would you say this? This person? How would you pronounce his name? Huh? Oh, okay, good. So it works in this country. In America, it doesn't. It's supposed to be a gate, a ravine, and Yigal Yadin. It's supposed to rhyme. In America, they say a gate, a ravine, and Yigal Yadin. It doesn't quite make it, but you guys could understand, could appreciate it. And that's what we're doing. And really, it's Hasharim Shemel Shlomo. We're going to go back to discussing an example of how you have a pasuk that's a little bit cryptic, but because we know our land and the archaeology that we've done over the last number of decades, it's going to be able to help us understand the pasukim better. So, just to get us again reoriented, we've done this in the past. I'm looking at ancient Jerusalem, the Jebusite city, then the era of David. So I got the city of David, I got Nachal Kidron, and I got here the Tyropian Valley as it comes down on this side. What was over here? The Gichon. Remember that? Now this area is a little bit of a dip. So we could call it the Milo, maybe because they fill it in, the Ophel, and then Har HaMoriah. On Har HaMoriah, eventually, Shlomo Melech is going to build the first temple, then we're going to have the second temple. But this is so clear to us. City of David, Har HaMoriah, the Gichon spring, the Nachal Kidron. All right? And if we're just going to match it up till today, Nachal Kidron, Nachal Kidron. Har HaMoriah, and here's Har HaMoriah with the remnants of the Bayit Sheni, in other words, the Har HaBayit. What I want to start out with, before we get to our cryptic pasuk, is we're going to start out in this area, which we call the southern excavations. So here we go. Let's zero in. Again, I have Har HaBayit, Temple Mount, the southern wall of the Temple Mount, and therefore this becomes southern excavations. Right over here is the city of David. On the top of the city of David is going to be the area in which has been discovered the administration or the palace of Shlomo HaMelech. It's going to be on the top of the city of David, and this area has also been filled in. I just want to go there for a few minutes. So here we are looking at the southern wall of the Temple Mount. Starting from 1968, right after the 67 war, from 68 to 78, about 10 years. This area was excavated, and the staircase over here was found. These staircases led up from the city of David, because in ancient times, people would come up these staircases and then head in. There was doors over here, we'll see them shortly, and head up into the Temple Mount. These areas was excavated by Benjamin Mazar, famous Benjamin Mazar. Here he's sitting with his granddaughter, Eilat Mazar. Okay, Mazar. And, excuse me? No, his granddaughter is Eilat, was Eilat, unfortunately she died. They're both archaeologists. And this is what he finds. So those stairs going up towards the Beis HaMikdash from the city of David, he uncovered them, but he saw that, look, they're not uniform in size. It's smaller or less wide and then wider. Let's look from the side. You see going up, it's wide, half the size. Wide, half the size. And that's how it is going all the way up. So why is that exactly? What happens when you have stairs that are not uniform in size?
You stop to think where you're going.
Yeah, you have to look. You ever do that when you're walking downstairs? Look at your feet. You'll trip because we do it automatically. Once it's out of whack from what we're used to, you have to take a look. What we're doing slows people down. I was told in the guiding course that that's because why? Because they have so many people coming to the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah, it's crowd control. You want to slow things down. So that's possible. I've heard since then another svara. We talked about a lot of stairs that there were in the Beis HaMikdash because it was climbing upwards towards the top of Mount Moriah. So you have stairs, the Sher Ma'alot, that you have from the in the front going in towards Shar Nikonos, and then you'd have also the Duchan of the Levi. But between the sanctuary, the Ulam, and the Mizbeach, there were 22 amot, and there were 12 steps. There's the Maseches Midos. The height of each step was half an amma with a tread of 1 amma. They were divided into 3 steps. Okay, so here it was that the way up from the Mizbeach towards the Ulam was like that as well. You had half an amma, and then there was like a platform going across, and they were divided into 3 sets of 4. The first set rows, 1 amma and 1 amma, a total of 2 amot. All right, what I'm missing over here is that it was not, again, uniform, the stairs. So somebody wants, you see that's in the Beis HaMikdash as well, so it's also over here on the way in towards the Beis HaMikdash. Somebody once told me, I'm not sure who, was that if you can imagine, people are so excited, they're flocking in mass in the Shlosh Regalim. It's been a while, 6 months in Sukkot, and you're coming to the Beis HaMikdash, and you're such zeal and such excitement, you're running up those stairs to get in, and they want to slow you down for a second and say, wait a second, Begila Barada, Mitzad Echad, it's Gila, it's excitement, Mitzad Sheni, we are entering the Beis HaMikdash. Take a step back for a second and contemplate the fact of where you're heading up to. Or it's Mitzad Echad the Simcha, Mitzad Sheni the Yira that we have to have for the Mokol. So it could be that it was to slow people down on purpose for that reason. Ma'anyen. We know that the Jewish people would come in. These are Sharei Chulda, because the prophetess Chulda used to sit in between these gates, probably up on top. You'd enter in, you're coming from the city of David, you'd enter into the gates. Over here, double gates that would take you upstairs, and then you'd reach the flooring of the Beis HaMikdash. And Chulda probably was over here between these two. Person would enter on the right side, and then circle around the Beis HaMikdash, and then come out on the left side. And that we still see till today. Over the years, the double gates on the outside, externally, the Muslims made them into 3 gates, and then eventually they closed them off. But here's the stairs going up, so we still have these pieces of the Beis HaMikdash on the left gates are still available. The lintel from the time of the Beis HaMikdash is still there. This is Beit Sheni. This has been also covered over. This is Crusader. Above, inside here and above is where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is. And these are the gates that are there. What's nice about it is, again, a message, a lesson. The walking around was for everybody except for a couple, 3 cases. And this is a lesson in Jewish sensitivity, in the Midas Chesed of Am Yisrael. Maseches Midas. All who would enter the Temple Mount entered toward the right and would encircle and exit to the left, aside from one which was something unfavorable had occurred, that he would encircle it towards the left, even when he entered. If he was asked, why are you encircling towards the left? If he answered, because I am a mourner, they would respond, he who rests in this house should comfort you. Once it's noticeable, a person's walking against the flow of the traffic, so you talk to him, you ask him what's going on, can we help you in some way? Very beautiful. And then also somebody who's put into Chayrim, then you'd say to them, you should listen to the words of your colleagues. Not over here in the Mishnah, but mentioned in either the Gemara or the Tosefta. They say, what's the third case? We'll leave on a happy note. A Kala, a Chassan Kala, they're going around in that direction. You can see, by their face. Then you would say, may he who dwells in this place bless you. You'd give tidings, a bracha of good tidings. So this is what happens. This is Maseches Midas. These are things that we learned just from looking at the archaeology. If we're back in this area, this what's called again the southern excavations. This is also southern excavations. We come around over here, this on the western. This is the Davidson Center of today. So if you come on in here, they've uncovered here tons, over 150. In this area on the west also, over 150 mikvaot. All right, and there's a perfect example of those mikvaot. What do we notice over here? This is missing, but you can still see the remnants of a separating wall. That's the proverbial, right, hafochbo v'hafochbo de kulobo. Everything's in the Torah. It's that proverbial, you don't want to rub shoulders with the wrong person. It's right over here. Why there's 2 staircases? Why is there a wall in between? Right, Tameh is coming down, the Tahar is going up. You don't want to touch on the way. So that's also you find in the Mishnayos. If you find utensils on those stairs, kol ha-kelim ha-nimtzim b'Yushalayim derech yirida lebeit ha-tefillah, if it's on the way down, you know that the kelim also are being carried by a person who's tameh, and therefore the kelim are also tameh. Derech aliyah tahorim, shelo kederech yiridatam aliyatam, divrei Rabbi Meir. So he points to this. So we actually see mol ha'inayim, we see in front of our eyes the things that were mentioned in the Mishnayos talking about the Mikdash. Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, we have a chance to see it with our own eyes. And that's going to bring us to, here's Eilat Mazar, Eilat Mazar. So Eilat Mazar is pointed out, she dug in this area. She sort of like continued on her grandfather's footsteps. And she dug out, this area had a lot of, not only Beit Sheni, but Beit Rishon. And in this area, you find also a gateway into this area. And this was built by Shlomo HaMelech. So she also uncovered what is either the administrative building or Shlomo's palace at the very top of Ir David. Unfortunately, she was nifter young a few years ago. But this is going to then bring us to the riddle of today. In Melachim, it talks about Shlomo Melech and what he built. And he says that the matter of the tax levy which King Solomon raised to build the temple of the Lord. I get it. He needed money. And his own house, the palace of the king. I get it. And the Milot is probably this area that he filled in. And the wall of Jerusalem, I understand. And Chatzor, and Megiddo, and Gezer. So these are interesting, 3 different cities. And the question becomes, and this is the riddle, why is it exactly that these are the 3 cities that are mentioned? Right? There's a lot of cities that Shlomo, the country was built up. We saw last week how his territories extended all the way up into Syria. Why are these the 3 cities specifically that are mentioned? And a little bit of digging around the land was going to help us understand. So, this is a good old map of the ancient times. We grew up on this, right? What do we call this? The Fertile Crescent. It's a crescent and it's fertile. Why is it fertile? Because I have here the Euphrates, right? The Prat and the Tigris. Yeah. And over here, so here's the Nile. So we got 2 major empires, right? Egypt, and this is going to be Mesopotamia. You're going to have Bavel eventually. Ashur is going to start from over here. Fertile Crescent. Good. If I'm having trade, there's also up in Turkey. If I'm having trade between these empires of Mesopotamia and of Egypt, how am I going to get? I'm not going to cross through like the nomad. I'm not going to cross through the Arabian desert. I'm going to stay next to the water. So I'm going to come and I'm going to head up along, usually I head up along the coast, then cut over somehow, get to Damascus and onto the Mesopotamia. I could theoretically come up somehow over here, get into Jordan, or theoretically I could go like this, and then at Aqaba, Eilat, get up into Jordan, go on the King's Highway. That's a possibility. The easiest thing and the shortest way is for me to go, and this week's Parsha, Derech Eretz Plishtim. That's for another time. Machlokas Rashi Ibn Ezra. We have found a lot of fortifications over here along this stretch that the Egyptians really protected this trade route. Could be that's like a leans towards the Ibn Ezra. Another time. But anyway, I'm going to go up along the Via Maris, along the coast, and then cut across. If I look at the map of Israel, I'm going to come up along the coast, and then I've got to cut across towards Damascus. Here's the Golan Heights, the Hermon, get to Damascus, then on to Mesopotamia. How am I going to cut across? How do you cut across? I have the Spina Mountains here, and I got the mountains of the Carmel over here, which connects up into the Harei Menashe. How am I going to cut across the country? I'm always boxed in by these mountains. So what am I going to look for to get across the mountains? Valleys, yeah. Or we're not in Israel. Anybody? I'll give you a hint. Anybody from New York area? I'm traveling out towards the camps in the Poconos. So I'm either in 80 or 84. All right. This is going to be the Delaware Water Gap. Has anybody here ever, canoed in the Delaware Water Gap if you're in camp, right? Now look, I have a gap. I have a gap in the mountains. So I could put a highway. Here you can see a train. And so, this is the easiest, but I'm not going to put it up and down, go up and down the mountains. I'm not going to put it on the side of the mountains because it gets washed away. The bottom over here, it's got a flat area along the gap. Okay, here's another one. All right? This is sort of like fill in wherever you want, but this is specific. I like to say this is myself and my wife, but not really. All right? Where are we now in this beautiful area? Well, I was on Shlichut for 2 years in Washington, D.C., so I'm out here in Virginia. Shenandoah, yes. So this is the gap going through. There's a better picture, but this is the gap with the highway. Obviously, look for the mountain passes, okay? I'm now back in Eretz Yisrael. Anybody? So much fun. Highway 1. This is Highway 1. I'm coming in. Now, this is when it was still only 2 lanes in both directions. Now, we again, seeing miracles. It's now 3 lanes in both directions. Whoa, that's a miracle, right? And the fact that we have the train, that's a super miracle. They're just getting ready for the coming of the Mashiach. because you're going to have to park down here someplace next to my house in Latrun, get on the train. 10 minutes later, you're going to be at Tachna because you get on the light rail. The light rail, they're now extending it into Shar Tzion. Boom. That's how you're going to deal with all the people of Ola Regel. Obviously. So I'm here in this place. Now this is sad, obviously. We remember this is Highway 1 going through, going up towards Yerushalayim when it was only this wide for both directions. And we know we're now talking about 1948. And the fact, this is right before you enter in. This must be Sha'ar Hagai. The gateway, the Sha'ar, the gate, the guy to the valley. And you can see it's a little bit broader here and then it gets narrower. This is where I live. The Sha'ar Hagai is near Latrun, near the turnoff towards Beit Shemesh. How do you say it in Arabic? Bab El Wad. Bab, like Baba Basra. Bab, the gateway. El Wad. Wad is Vadi. So Bab El Wad, the gateway to the valley. And we know the stories from back in 1948. We started out, I mentioned the Peel Commission, add to that the Negev. And we start out and it goes very badly for us. We lose the war, and this is actually good for Yom HaTzmaut, but we lose the war in the first month. We lost. We started, this is the areas we lost, and this, again, for some other time, keeping an eye on the clock. So, but Israel's losing, and we're about to lose also Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim's under siege. To his credit, Ben Gurion says that we're not giving up Yerushalayim. After 2,000 years, we're going to have a state of our own. We're not going to have it without the capital being Yerushalayim. So, Bab El Wad. We have to break the siege, and we start sending caravans up through this narrow area. All the Arabs have to do, and here's the caravans that we would set up to send to bring food to beleaguered Yerushalayim. All the Arabs have to do is just sit on the top of those mountains looking down at the highway, and that's where they would set up their ambushes. You roll some stones down, you block the road. And again, for another lecture, but because of time, but this was the challenge of 1948, and that's why holding on to your valley, your mountain pass, is going to make such a big difference militarily. You control the lands. And the chevra that would go in, they say that the drivers, they couldn't hold, they were so nervous as they entered through Sha'ar Hagai, they couldn't hold the steering wheel because their hands were shaking. And that's the challenge. It's an old sad song because it's sad. Forever you should remember our names as the caravans were trying to break through to the city. On the side of the road, the ones who are killed are lying. This, I think, is Yerushalayim, caravans that were taken over. This was used to push the rocks off the road if it was blocking the road. So the prayer that we should always be remembered. Very sad song. Waiting in line for the rations that were coming in. And of course that's going to bring us to the way that Yerushalayim was saved at the Burma Road. But that's, again, another story. And we still have till today the remembrance. So if I have to get to Yerushalayim, I got a mountain pass. It's right over here, Nachal Sorek. I'm going to pass by Modi'in, Sha'al Abim, Latrun, Nachal Ayalon. I'm going to go on up, and that's going to be the way to get into the mountains, not cross the mountain. I could continue down towards Ma'ale Adumim, but that's the idea of the mountain passes that I needed. So, how do I get across this area? There's a place right over here that there's a mountain pass. Okay, that's the city that's going to be holding on to that mountain pass. Anybody? Beautiful picture, but you see that highway, it's kind of narrow till today, going through the mountains. That's Megiddo. Okay, here's the highway, going right past, and on this tell, that's Megiddo. You hold the tell of Megiddo, you hold the mountain pass, and if you're holding that mountain pass strategically, militarily, I have control over the entrance into Emek Yisrael, the Jezreel Valley. I can see across the beautiful Emek. What's this going to be? The bump on the far east side of the Emek, Mount Tabor. Yesh. Good. Why is Mount Tabor famous? Devorah. On the top there's a little Knessia. I owe you a story. But as we know, Vatishlach Vatikra Baruch ben Avinoam, Devorah calls over Baruch, And he says to them that you have to go to battle, Mashachta Bahar Tavor, and gather in Har Tavor, and from there, Ish Naphtali, and from there you should go out to battle against Sisera.
This week's Haftorah.
This week's Haftorah. Oh, right, Misnabe, Veni Yudeh Masha Misnabe, happen to be there. But that's now anything obviously that here you can see on Tabor looking in the other, looking at the valley from the other side towards Megiddo. Now this is there's a church up on top over there. I'm just looking for the time. Okay, just have to say one story. The reason I put this up there, why, is because it's very meaningful to me personally. Why? Because as we came in towards the tour guiding course, people take off 6 months to study for the tour guiding course's final exam. Usually it starts out with a 4-hour written exam. You get past that, then you go in front of a committee of 4 people who shoot questions at you. You have to present, and then they shoot questions at you for 40 minutes. And it's anything you learned in the cumulative over the last 2 years. Crazy, crazy stuff. So I had to do, triage. I was also teaching that year in Hakotel, so I just didn't have time. So triage, I dropped for Christianity. I knew they were going to ask me, beard, kippah, So what did I do? I studied the last week of Yeshu in Yerushalayim, and also the Jesus Trail up in the north. I did mine, right? So, and then I had to, I didn't have time to study the rest. I got in there, I remember it till today. The first thing they asked me was about Christianity, and they said, talk a little bit about the Church of the Transfiguration up on Har Tabor. It's not the Jesus Trail, let me tell you. So I remember I had like goosebumps that shot through my arms, and like I got so excited, I jumped at them, then went back a little bit. And why? I didn't study this, because triage, right? But 6 months prior to this, I had done a paper for class about this church. So I happen to know, out of all the things, this is probably the best thing I knew about Christianity, right? As they say, Yesh Elokim Gadol Bashamayim. So I jumped at them and I said, what? The Church of the Transfiguration, Barlucci, thematic architecture, 2 large facades representing Moshe and Eliyahu, and I went through this whole speech, and they didn't ask me any other questions. It was great. Thank you. I still remember that. It was amazing. What does this have to do with anything? That there's a God who plays on our team. That's a theme that always comes up, right? So anyway, we're looking in Megiddo. Let's go back to Megiddo. Now, like last week, we went to Tel Beersheba. There's a way up, and I come to the gate area that protects the entire city. So this is what it looks like from above. Not great. This is what it looks like in an artist rendition. I have numerous gates over here. Megiddo's important. You control Megiddo. You control the middle of the country. You control going into, it's today Highway 65. You control going into Emek Yisrael. That's the whole center of the country. So look, what are they set up like this for? Because you have, if you get through this gate, you come in here, what happens to you? Boom! You don't want to go in there. That's dead area, because then you got people here, like it makes it invincible. That's Megiddo. All right. Now, the way these gatehouses work, that's the gatehouse, the major gatehouse. Got a tower, and I got the area, the gatehouse itself. Let's see how they're set up. Usually, the tower on both sides. People on the tower, they have the height advantage shooting down. There's a large gate over here. Then what you have usually is chambers, usually 4 chambers. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I got a gate. If these chambers are filled with soldiers, if the enemy gets through this gate, there's another gate here, these soldiers come out of their chambers and they fight the enemy, holding them back. If these guys lose, then this gate over here again, these soldiers come out. That's how it's set up. In Megiddo, we find that there's not 4 chambers, but there's actually 6 chambers. Heavy fortification. This is what we found over there in Megiddo. Okay, this is actually how it looks like when they uncovered the gates in the original archaeology. You're going, this is the gate path, and here you got the chambers along the way. Better. Come in like this, 1 chamber, 2 chambers, there's a 3rd chamber. That's your typical gatehouse into the cities. Nowadays it's fixed up and cleaned up for you, so you can see that you're walking in and you got the chambers on either side. So we get it. We understand. All right, that's going to be Megiddo. That's how if I hold Megiddo, so then I hold. All right, so again, the trade is coming up through here, and then it's cutting across through here. I get to Emek Yisrael. I could get down towards Beit Shan, and then head up underneath the Golan Heights towards Damascus. Or Emek Yisrael, continue on 65 to Tiberia, come up through Chula Valley, go underneath the Hermon mountain and get to Damascus. These are my paths of getting across the mountain gaps. I also have Highway 70 right over here. Highway 65 is on. And not only is it strategic and militarily, what else do I gain if I control the highways? Taxes. If I have taxes, if I control all the merchandising, I get a lot of money. If I have money, I could buy armaments. I could buy tanks. What's my tank from the ancient times? Chariots. So that explains what's going on over here. If I'm going to get into the Chula Valley and then head on the road underneath the Golan, the Hermon, and get to Damascus, so I'm going to hold this area right here, right? That which enters in the Chula. What is over here that's entering into the Chula? Chatzor, Yefeh. So let's go to Chatzor. Whoop, that's Chatzor. Beautiful site, amazing site, and it's looking at it's on the mountain, holding. You have Chatzor, you hold the highway. Let's get a bit. And here I'm sitting in Chatzor. I'm looking out towards Ramat Naftali, and here's the valley, the Chula Valley below me. So the road is right down here, and that's the secret to Chatzor. So, oh, beautiful. I'm in Ramat Naftali. I'm not sure if this is Chatzor. This I think is Chatzor Yili. I'm not sure. Chatzor is right over here, and here's the Chula Valley, and obviously the Hermon. So you could take it still till today, the same roads. I'm going to take 92 all the way up to Kiryat Shmona, make a right turn, stop by Kenyon Nehemiah, because everybody does, then make a right turn, and then continue on over here towards Damascus. Nothing much has changed. Why is that important? Because a couple of times we find in Tanakh, if I'm in Chatzor, I got money. If I've got money, then I have chariots. If I have chariots, I'm the strongest army. And if I'm the strongest army, I become the leader of the area. I become the king. And that's why in Yehoshua, what's mentioned, there's not that many battles mentioned in Yehoshua, but it says at one point that Yehoshua has to deal with the northern alliance. Vayashav Yehoshua be'etahi vayokod et Chatzor v'et Malkah hikah b'cherev. That's why Chatzor is always coming up in Tanakh, at least in the beginning. Because they're the strongest, we see why. Because topographically, they're situated in a place that's going to give them military advantage, also going to give them a lot of money. Again, this week's Parsha, right? This week's HaTorah, Shoftim, Devorah, Vayim Kareim Hashem biyad. The Jewish people don't do what they should be doing, and therefore God sells them into the hands of Yadin Melech Canaan, Hashem Malach b'Chatzor, and who's his general? Sisera. That's going to bring us into the story. Now Sisera has how many chariots? 600 chariots. That's a mighty army. We have 600 tanks. That's a pretty mighty army. So that explains what is happening. But then you come to Chatzor, so it's also built. Who does Chatzor? Archaeologist? Yigal Yadin, the same person that is famous for Masada. So Yigal Yadin comes to Chatzor. This is a fuzzy picture, but this is the idea. What did we see before? The gatehouse, towers on either side, and then if you get in through the gate, what's going to be in the gatehouse itself? Chambers. It turns out that in Chatzor, it's not just a fort chamber, but it's been fortified because of its importance. Who's been fortifying it? Shlomo HaMelech. And there you find there's 6 chambers over here. So Yigal Yadin gets up there and he says, oh, this is going to be the same as Megiddo, because these are important, right? And if you come to Chatzor today, you can see the gate. Here's the tower, and then 1 chamber, 2 chambers, and then 1 chamber, 2 chambers, 3 chambers. Okay, 6 chamber. This is the gatehouse, and then it's surrounded by the gates around it. Very, very cool. Better look. There you go. Tower, and then you got the 6 chambers. So this is what Yigal Yadin says. He says, wait a second. What did we see in that pasuk? What was our cryptic pasuk? Why Shlomo build Dafka Megiddo and Chatzor? And he also mentions Gezer. So they're very important. They're the entrance ways to to the valleys, to the way to cross the country. So Yigal Yadin called himself a secular fundamentalist. He held a Tanakh in one hand, but we saw a picture of him with his head. So, but he believed in the Tanakh. So he said, "Oh, this is a cinch," because I got a pasuk. He says, "This is Chatzor, the gatehouse itself." So this is what he writes in his book about Chatzor. He says, "I even remember vividly the gimmick used to impress our laborers even before the contours and plan of the gate became clear. They just started to dig. Now, we trace the plan of the Megiddo gate on the ground, marking it with pegs to denote corners and walls, and then instructed our laborers to dig according to the marking, promising, here you will find a wall, or there you will find a chamber." He says it's in the Tanakh, it's in the Nach. Shlomo built these things. He used the same blueprint. Right? You borrowed your neighbor's blueprints. So he says it's going to be the same exact thing as Megiddo. Now Megiddo had been excavated in the early 1900s. He's doing this in 60s or 70s. So what happens? However, our workers, mostly elderly Jews, had recently immigrated from North Africa, were well versed in the Bible. So when we read them the biblical verse about Solomon's Chatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer, our prestige took a dive, but that of the Bible rose sky high. And Yadin was honest enough to write this. But it looked like he's a magician. But this is it. In other words, he said this is obviously Shlomo's work. It's Shlomo's handiwork. So if I have 6-chambered gates dated to Solomon, this is going to be Megiddo. We saw it with all the area, the dead area in the middle. Right? Tower, 6 chambers. And we get to Chatzor, it's exactly the same. What remains? Gezer. I'm going to Gezer over here. Now Gezer's a little bit different. It's got pretty much the same ratios as far as the, what would you say, ratio? As far as the proportions, thank you. But it's a little smaller. So let's go to Gezer and see what we find. Gezer's where? Okay, here was Megiddo, here was Chatzor. Gezer's right over here. Where's Gezer? Right next to what's called Emek Ayalon. If you came in at anywhere along here by Aza, any of these ports, Ashkelon, Aza, you get on Highway 3 of today, and you're heading in towards the middle of the country. Emek Ayalon's right around over here. And from Emek Ayalon, you could either take Highway 1 to Yerushalayim or Highway 443. All right, which is also known as Ma'aleh Beit Choron, which goes back to the story of Yehoshua. Okay, so I'm going to be right here in Gezer. Gezer is the, wait a second, do we have it? Gezer, I'm on the hill of Gezer. I'm looking out over Emek Ayalon. If I hold Gezer, then I hold Highway 3. I hold the whole middle of the country. That's why Emek Ayalon, middle of the country, it's flat. That's why all the battles are going on over there. Yoshua, Hanukkah's story is right there. Hashmonaim, Yehuda Maccabee against the Syrian Greeks. That's 1948, right? You got to hold the middle of the country. So I'm up here in Gezer. You can see how you're on top on the tell, and in front of you, this is Highway 3 below, and this is going to be Emek Ayalon, the hills of Yerushalayim. Let's get a better look. Here I'm standing, believe it or not, in my hometown. Where am I? I'm in Nofi Ayalon. Does this work? This is the trestles for the Rakevin. Here I am. Now I'm in Nofi Ayalon, looking down at Highway 1, going toward Shar Hagai, Latrun, and you swing around. You see there's an Emek. Here's the hills of Judah, all right? And that's how we swing around. Here's the mount, the train, okay? And I'm looking out over here towards Emek Ayalon, Mavo Choron over there. That's going to be right up towards Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. My house is right over here. That's my backyard. All right, let's do that better. There we go. All right, this is my backyard, looking out over Emek Ayalon. It's my wife. And if you're in the middle of the country, we're only 6 minutes off the Latrun exit. Please come by. We'll sit in my backyard. We'll talk. We'll talk about Tanakh, and we'll have a cup of coffee. All right. But this is what you're looking at when you get there. So this fellow named Stuart McAllister, he goes to Gezer in the early 1900s. I think it's 1909 or 5, and he's over there. But this is the early years of archaeology, and what the guy does is. That was pretty dumb. He just dug trenches. They took the trenches, they dug out the dirt, dumped it on the side, took a look at what it is. and what's in there, but because it's not in situ, it's not like in the place, you can't do stratigraphy, you don't know what year anything is. We got off of that. But he dug over here and he does find large construction. He claims that it's a Hasmonean palace. All right? He only dug one side. He says it's a Hasmonean palace. Right over here is Highway 3, by the way. So what happens, though? This is what it looks like today after it was dug out. Who digs it out now? Yigal Yadin. What does Yigal Yadin say? He got the notes from McAllister's excavations, and he looks at it and he says, that ain't no Hasmonean palace. What is that? It's obviously going to be half of Solomon's gates. All right? So he comes on in, and sure enough, you got the towers, and he digs. He got 1 and 2, 3 chambers, and here's going to be the gate facing the highway. And he said, and he digs up the other side of it, and he says, this is Pashut. This is going to be Solomon's gates. So what happened is that this has been open to discussion whether it's true or not. I just saw an article on one of these BuzzFeeds, news feeds, that they didn't think it's dated that back, and the dating just came out, new dating on it that does prove Yadin as being correct. So we're happy. That's happy ending to the story. But that's when you get to a pasuk such as this, that Shlomo builds Jerusalem and Chatzor and Megiddo and Gezer. Why these three? Because we know now, we take a look at the country, we understand that these three cities are imposing cities or tells that sit on and control the highways into a major valley, major area in the country. If you control these three cities, you control the movement of armies and also obviously taxation. You get wealthy that way, you can run your country. So you have like a little bit, all you have is like a pasuk, and you're trying to figure out why dafka these three, but now that we have done archaeology and know our country well, it makes a lot of sense what Shlomo HaMelech was doing. Just so that we should be able to finish up on a piece of inspiration and tie back into our country, so I allowed myself to go to this. In Devarim, I assume that most people in this room have made Aliyah at some point in their lives. Is that a fair assumption? Okay. The pasuk says in Devarim that in the future God, V'shav Hashem Elokecha et shvutcha, that God will return the captives of Israel, V'richamcha, V'shav, V'kibetzcha mikol amim. God's going to bring us back in gathering of the exiles. Hashem Yitzcha Hashem Elokecha Shama. When it says V'shav Hashem Elokecha et shvutcha, how do you translate that in English? And God will return. In Hebrew we should say V'heshiv Hashem Elokecha et shvutcha, that God will return the captives. When it says V'shav Hashem, it says God is returning. What do you mean God is returning? Where did he go to? So Rashi has two answers. The first is that God, and as we know, God always goes with us out into exile and comes back with us. Yaakov Avinu, Shem says, don't worry, I'm going to go down with you. I'll bring you back up. Dafka there, you're going to become a great nation. Don't worry. Okay, what's the second answer of Rashi? What do you mean that God's coming back from the Golus with the Shvutcha? That ingathering of the exile is so challenging, koshi, difficult, that God himself, it's as if you say God himself has to stick out his hand to each and every individual that makes it back. Let's spin that in the positive sense. That means that each and every one of you who have come from some foreign country, why are you here? Because you're so special, you're special enough that Kadosh Baruch Hu felt that it was important that he should stick out his hand and pull you back into his country to be close to him. Kan bar tzedeno hakadosh, kan efo sheinei Hashem elokecha ba merishit hashana achrit shana. And when we get to Tu B'Shvat, we allow ourselves to get, give ourselves pats on the shoulders. There you have it. Thank you very much.
There are kibbutz Gezer up by the Kinneret. Where's kibbutz Gezer?
Right next to Gezer. Right next to Gezer.
There?
Yeah, you're thinking of kibbutz Kinneret, maybe.
No, what am I thinking?
Kibbutz.
I mean, there's Beganya. No, what am I thinking?
Beganya. Kinneret. That's it. I'll have that in your mind.